Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer, part number LB8005 504N-619. What does all of that mean? It means that this is a hinge. It is a less common hinge. You're not going to bump into this hinge often, but when you do, in my opinion, it's because someone, the owner, obviously, elected to go for a very high-quality hinge, a hinge that suits the requirements of the application as best as possible, and agreed to spend the money to make all that happen. This is what an LB8005 504N 619 is. A lot to unpack there. So first of all, the hinge might appear to you initially, wow, that looks a little obtusely rectangular. Yeah, because it's 5 tall and 4 wide. And this is a particular application that we're going to go over. But let's start with dissecting the part number. LB from Bommer means that it is a lube bearing. And that means that in this case, when it's an LB8, that it is a 3-knuckle hinge. 3-knuckle hinge. Okay, you can see why. I like the 3-knuckle hinge design because it's simply a very clean-looking hinge. It's not a exposed ball bearing packet where you have 5 knuckles and you've got bearing packets, separating 2 of those intersections. A much cleaner looking hinge in terms of what you see really from the outside. Okay, really clean looking hinge. The 8 in the part number means 3-knuckle, and then the 005, that tells us that it is a number of things. Let's look at it. It is a full mortise hinge. Okay. When you bring the leaves parallel to each other, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame, and that's accomplished because of the swag on the hinge leaf that's here and here. Okay, it also means that it is a hinge made of solid brass. That's indicated twice, actually, in the part number. The first area is where it's going to be indicated in the 5, and we're going to look at the way to dissect that part number actually as well. Okay, so the LB means lube bearing, 8 means 3-knuckle. That first 0 means that it's full mortise. The next 0 means that it is a standard hinge, meaning it's not raised barrel or an anchor hinge or a slip-in hinge or a swing clear type of hinge or a wide throw hinge. It's just a standard full mortise hinge. The 5 at the end means 2 things. As I said earlier, it means that it's made of brass. And I was trying to go from memory how to dissect all of the digits. I had to pull up the how to order matrix. It means 2 things. I already said it's made of solid brass and it's heavyweight. And on a 5-inch hinge, your leaf thickness is 0.192 is what this measures, but a standard thickness for a heavyweight hinge. The leaf thickness on a 5-inch heavyweight hinge is 0.190. So that's what this indeed is. As we move through the rest of the part number, we have 504. That is the size. It takes a little bit of getting used to understand how Bommer puts their sizing together, but this is a 5-inch hinge that's 4-inch wide. Why would it be like this? Well, we'll dive into it in a moment. Simply stated, you've got a door that you do not need to have that vertical axis of pivoting further away from the center of the door for any reason as a result of clearance issues. So in the application that I have with my client, we have, and I'll show you the drawing, we have 4 doors. The 2 inner doors are hinged to the 2 outer doors. Those 2 outer doors are hinged to the jamb. They're going to fold the 1 door in and then fold all of that out and around. None of what the client is doing goes beyond 90 degrees, according to the drawing, which means that they don't have to get out and around a clearance. And by going with the 4-inch wide hinge, we bring those panels together as close as possible. Okay, when the 2 are folded, together, they're as close to possible. You swing that door out and then swing it all open. It's all going to be as tight to the jamb, to the wall, or to the other door as much as possible. You would use a 5x5 needlessly, or a 5x4.5 needlessly. There's no trim to get around. These doors are only going to 90 degrees. Best practice would tell us to use a 4-inch hinge, and that's why it's a 4-inch hinge. Now, it's important to know the height is the first dimension. It's not the way that doors are sized. Doors are sized by the width first. Hinges are backwards, or doors are backwards. I don't think either is backwards. I think what they're giving you is the most important information first. And again, we'll take a look at that drawing. So that's the 504, showing us why we want the 4-inch. But what I was saying earlier about the doors and hinges being backwards, the most important dimension is first. You need both dimensions, but it would be like telling someone where to go, but telling them that, proceed at 55 miles an hour. Okay, I need to know the speed limit, I suppose, but tell me what direction is. So you need both pieces of information, but the first thing you'd like to know is head north at 55, rather than proceed at 55 miles an hour. Okay, which direction? So I liken it that way. To know that a door is 3 foot by 7 foot, I need to know both of those things, but the first thing I would prefer that I heard was the width. Same with a hinge. The first thing I'd like to hear is the height, because it tips me off as to a lot of things in terms of what the potential thickness is, the volume of use, the width of the door, the height of the door. All these things are kind of inferred in that height. You can draw conclusions. Then when you tell me the width, I put more pieces of it together, and then I can really narrow down. But it would be, direction and then speed, I suppose. Just a poor analogy. Now there's an N in the part number as well. That means non-removable pin. When I show you the drawing, you'll understand why. There are 12 hinges on this order. They all didn't need to be NRPs. The inner pair could have been just standard hinges, or maybe it's backwards. Well, half of them did not need to be NRP, but it wasn't really thought of in terms of making half of them not NRP. There's always the chance that the client will say, I can drive these pins out. Yes, because you put the wrong NRPs on that side. Not that it's the client's job to know hardware in the sense of understanding the part numbers. It would be our job to indicate this goes here, this goes here. But anyway, security pin. So what that means is when there is a set screw that's drilled and tapped in here. When that hole is drilled and then tapped, there's a pin that you can drive out of here. When you loosen that set screw, you can drive the pin out. But when you loosen the set screw, drive the pin down, tighten the set screw, that set screw will fit into a notch, a groove around the circumference of the pin, preventing you from driving it out. These doors swing out even though the inner leaves will swing in, or it's backwards. I forget which it is. The inner leaves might swing out, then it all swings in. It probably all swings out. So those outer leaves would have to be security pin because it is an exterior opening. We'll talk about different security features as well. The last part of the part number is 619. That means three things. It means it's made of brass, solid brass, that it has a satin nickel finish, and that there is a clear coat over it. Okay? It means all of that. Now, let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at some supporting information. Forgive me, I was not done with the part number. I was looking at the screw pack saying something's awry here, but it's not. There's an AWS in the part number, and that brings me to an important point. The client is doing a project of doors, hanging them in frames. You can attach hinges to wrought channel iron, steel, fiberglass, wood, composite material, aluminum. You have to define, you should define to the factory what screw you need. So knowing that it was wood by wood, I defined to the factory AWS for all wood screws. Why? Well, because I want to be sure the client gets the screws they require, meaning would the factory send out all machine screws and half wood screws? Yes, that's possible that could be done. I can tell you that this material is ending up in the Caribbean. It's going to go from here to a freight forwarder in Florida and then down to somewhere, 1,000 miles away. And I don't want my client to be 1,000 miles away and say, hey, I only got half the wood screws I need. And where are you going to get solid brass, although I believe that these aren't solid brass. They're probably stainless, because brass would not be magnetic whatsoever, although stainless would be. Where are you going to get non-ferrous, number 12 by 1.25 inch, threaded to the head, Phillips drive, flathead wood screws? Where are you going to get those? Or sheet metal screws? Well, they're wood screws. You're not, is the answer. So define at the point of ordering the material exactly what screws you need. There's no reason for the factory to get it wrong. They're going to package either their standard or what you ask them to package, and that's the point. Let's switch to the screen view now, and we're going to take a closer look at a bunch of supporting documentation. Let's take a look at some supporting information. So here's the item that we're looking at. Photographs first. Let's take a look. That's what the edge of the box looks like. There's our hinge with its screw package. That shows the fact that it's a full mortise hinge with those swags or those bends on the hinge leaf here. Backside of the hinge. We did a nice job finishing the backside of the hinge as well. Not every manufacturer does that. That shows the NRP fairly close. You can't gain access to that from the outside when the door is closed. Okay. Close-up of the Bommer logo. Made in USA. Doesn't say USA Bommer, it says Made in USA. That's different than just saying USA. I could say USA. That might be more of a statement of, you know, pride for one's country, but it doesn't mean that, you know, anything is manufactured in the United States. That's what that means. That matters, at least to me. It may or may not to you, but it does to some. Maybe less so to others. Let's see. And then, of course, the screw package. This is just AWS, all wood screws. Now, let's take a look at how we got to this hinge. And the opening that we are working on is literally this opening here, and I believe the client drew it incorrectly from the elevation and the cross-section and the plan view. So what I mean to say is, you know, we obviously have to be looking at it this way in order to have the lock here and the barrels here. But I'm thinking that we are looking at it's just drawn incorrectly in the sense that the hinge reference should be not shown here but shown here. No, they're showing the interior view. So there, yeah, I mean the interior view is an accurate view. This would be a right side view, so the interior view is accurate, and this would be the exterior side. And because the doors are going to 90 degree, there would be no reason to accommodate that 5/8 thick trim. And we're going to talk about how to determine what this should have been if they were going to 180. Yeah. Anyway, so because they're going to 90 degree, keeping those hinges as tight as possible to the face of the door is what was desired. And I don't really know if this line back here references the fact that this is installed into a very thick wall. I don't believe there's any, although there might be. Let's take a look. Door location key plan. Sure, it's got to be here. Yeah, right here. So those doors are literally limited. I'm assuming that we're dealing with bar or dining. It's the only group of 4 here. So those doors literally can't go to 180 degree. They just can't. So in that regard, it's just quite elegant. As is this home, which is probably a first floor here. Okay. So now, why are we harping on and on about the hinge? Let's talk about that. So, what we have is or at least the width of the hinge. What we have here is, just draw a frame. Okay, got a hinge barrel here. In this sort of scenario, you really do want the center line of that to be as close to the center of the thickness as possible. Now, that can change when you have casing out here. You have to then think about where the barrel of the hinge needs to project based on where the door is going to go. If you're only going to go to 90 degree, then I suppose it doesn't really matter at all. You know, if you're only going to here, and you're not going out to here, so that's 90 and that's 180, then this dimension in here doesn't really matter because you can't get to it. However, in many instances, it very much does matter. And where that might be the case would be, you got a wall in here, you're not going to have any trouble, you know, if you've got a couple of studs there and there's nothing applied. Well, what if we had this? Okay. And let's say that this is a 5 3/4 hollow metal frame, and that's 8-inch CMU. So now you have to calculate what's happening here, because you've been told the door has to go to and hold open at 180 degree, or at least not hold open by means of the closer, but they're going to mechanically hold the door open. You know, an application of that would be a daycare where they have children that go outside for recess sort of scenario, and they want the doors opened at 180, and they're going to hook them open with a door stop and holder scenario. So how do we determine this? Well, I didn't need to run the following formula because I knew it didn't matter. We were only going to 180 degree, but the information is as follows. It is dt minus hb plus C plus, you know what, dt minus HB plus C plus I. Let's define these terms. dt is the door thickness. That's the door thickness. Let's say it's 1.75. I don't know how thick these doors are. Sure we do. 1 3/4. These hinges were ordered about 3 weeks ago, so I don't recall the details. So 1 3/4 thick doors. Now the hinge back set is when you mortise that hinge to the door, you're mortising it in here, right? You're not mortising it here. That's the hinge back set. That's 0.25 normally. Clearance is the dimension when the door is at 180 degree here. When the door is at 180 degree, what's that dimension? Clearance. In our case, it's 0. Plus inset. Inset is the dimension from the face of the frame to the face of the door. In this case, I believe it to be 0. I don't recall. It's not indicated, but we know that it's pretty damn near 0, if not 0. Okay, so let's just say that it's 0. Oh, I messed up part of the equation. Okay, don't get no never mind. Parenthesis times 2 plus clearance. So the formula is door thickness minus hinge back set times 2. Forgive me. So dt minus hb times 2 plus c plus I. 1 3/4 minus 1/4 times 2 is 3 inch plus 0 plus 0. We could have used a 3-inch hinge on this. The rule says go to the next largest commercially available hinge, and we're going to see on the documentation, the cut sheet, that there is no narrower hinge when you do 5-inch and heavyweight than 4-inch. Okay, but now you know how to decode this. Let's say that in our scenario, let's say that your inset was 2-inch. 1 3/4 minus 1/4 inch times 2 is 3 plus 2 is 5. So let's say now that your door, let's say that your frame was here, your door was set in. You would need a 5-inch wide frame to get that, or 5-inch wide hinge to get that hinge barrel out there. Okay, clearance, would be something you're applying out here that you have to get around as well. inset is not uncommon. If this stop was moved over, what they could have done was, and you do see it, and I think I would have considered doing this myself, on a home as drawn here, I think it might be safe to say that with doors like this, certain expenses were not spared. I think that would be accurate to conclude. What I would have done is I would have made my jamb the entire thickness of the wall, whatever it is, 10-inch thick. I would have used my trim on both sides. I would have centered my doors in the middle of the opening, if possible. It may not have been possible, but it may have been possible. So that what we're looking at there is, here's what you would be looking at. A scenario where you have a wall like this, you've got your jamb, your door is right here. You're going to put a stop here, obviously. Your doors are going to swing out. Now you really have to clarify what that clearance is. Pardon me, what your inset is. Clearance is going to be 0. That's likely the way I would have drawn it, so as to allow the unit to look a bit cleaner in the opening, because when you're on the egress side, when you're standing in here, you see some drywall, you see all this big giant area, the doors seem so far away. I would have centered those doors. If the hardware was available, I would have centered them. Is what I would have suggested. Now that goes counter to keeping the hinge barrel as close to the center as possible. I still would have applied that rule, but I would have gone for a more elegant architectural look than what's being done here. No offense, I just would have done it differently. I obviously love how it looks. And I do need me one of these living room with bar and dining room happening, that's for sure. So looking great there. Now let's switch to the template. The template shows the BB5004 or the LB. It shows the hinge that we need in 3 different base materials: steel, brass, bronze, or stainless. We're brass or bronze, so we're at an LB8004. This hinge can be done in 4, 4.5, 5, 6, 7, and 8-inch wide. So we could have certainly have centered those doors, because the wide throw hinge is definitely available in a 5-inch tall hinge. Why did we go with a 5-inch tall? Well, the concern I believe that the client had over the weight of the doors, 164-inch wide opening, 164 divided by 12, 13 and 2/3 feet divided by 4. You've got doors that are almost 3.5 foot wide. What's the height? I don't know, but we've got a door here that's 88-inch. It's not indicated here. I don't know that there's a schedule either of everything, but they're taller than average. So yeah, plus 5-inch tall. Why? You got all the weight of this door hanging on this hinge, hanging on these hinges. I actually would have probably have considered a 6 by 4.5 or a 6 by 5 just for the height alone. That could have been possible as well. You've got a lot happening on that top hinge right there, which is another reason I wanted the 3-knuckle hinge, because the margins on a Bommer flagship LB8000 hinge are nice and tight. Thick material, thick margins. It should do the client pretty well. Now back to that template. Let's take a look. It will show you the swag line, dimension A, for all of these 6 different widths. Okay. Now you'll notice how down here you've got 4, 4.5, and 5, these width dimensions. It becomes a wide throw after you get past 5-inch, and that's where that 0 turns into a 1, because that's a hinge type. If you're not sure, let's back up. If you're replacing hinges and you're not sure of where the screw holes are on your existing or whether or not this will work, definitely check first. This document is called a template. This happens to be the template pattern for a 5-inch tall hinge. So the term template is used 2 different ways. If you're not sure if this is accurate to match your existing, check it out first. Then there is a link to the cut sheet that is here as well. It's an overview of the 8005 hinge and its steel and stainless steel base material counterpart. What's nice about this heavyweight hinge is that this table here will show you the other sizes that are available and what can be done. 6 by 4.5 would have been a good option for this as well, in my opinion. 5 by 4. You know, just because the height is known to carry, the taller that you go, I think that the concept was for every ½ inch you go, you increase the hinge's capacity by about 20% to hold the weight of the door to do its job. 5 by 4 will be pretty nice on this, though, I believe. That's the cut sheet. Now, there's also a link below this video here to the manufacturer's page where when you click on that, you'll be able to pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website. And they have a new website design. They've, for years and years, they had this older design that served them fairly well, but they have updated the design of the site and certainly does a better job at graphically describing to the end user what Bommer is all about. They are quite proud about this. 1876. Learn about our history. The brothers Bommer started Bommer. Fun fact, the ownership of Bommer today is the husband of the granddaughter of one of the brothers. Really fascinating. Really, really fascinating. Serving the war effort, the Renaissance, the here and now. Good group of folks, that's for sure. Really good group of folks. So I'll leave you to explore their site. The product catalog is here. Before we get to that, the how to order matrix, the quick little link, which is here, it's a one-page that will allow you to build their part numbers. The only thing you need to be mindful over is don't get their sizing incorrect. I did that once about 25 years ago, and I realized, okay, cowboy, actually sit and learn the sizing, because what I thought was correct was not correct. And once you get used to it, you can pretty much do anything you need to it. But this is how the part number is dissected right here. But that catalog is exceptionally comprehensive in the sense that it is 80 plus pages of all things Bommer. If you know the name Bommer at all, you do as a double or single acting spring hinge company. And indeed, their 3029 hinge is the hinge that everyone knows them by. And I think it's on the cover of on the landing page of their site. Their site has always been a little slow. I don't know why that's the case. But just give it a moment. This is the hinge that everyone knows Bommer for, that 3029-6. That hinge is everywhere. If you've ever been in a kitchen, in a restaurant, between the food prep area and the counter, and there's a double acting door, it's probably a Bommer hinge. So that 3029. But they do single acting hinges. That's to be sure. They have a comprehensive offering of single acting hinges. And what makes it comprehensive is all of the different patterns of screw holes. All of these different patterns conspire to mean different manufacturers of doors. Permador, Johnson, Pease, Peachtree, Acorn, Castlegate, Johnson, Stanley, General, Taylor. There's one they don't have. I keep bumping into it. I forget who that manufacturer is. Benchmark, I think, is what it is. They don't have a Benchmark hinge. So as you go through the catalog, you'll be able to explore the world of all things hinge related from Bommer. Fun fact, they do also have lavatory hardware. They also have, which is important to know in the sense that you have a bathroom, a restroom, and you don't want the standard toilet partition hardware. You want solid brass, architectural finishes. Bommer can do all of that with their series of lavatory hardware. Let's wrap up this video on camera. In conclusion, to wrap up the conversation on this hinge, the last thing I'd like to point out to you would be the Bommer logo again. Right above it, it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer's quite proud of, as am I to represent them. Okay, and again, Made in USA means Made in USA. I've been to both plants that Bommer has. They have their plating plant and their manufacturing plant separated. They do plating elsewhere. I think the plating plant is either just over the border in South Carolina or just over the border in North Carolina. I forget. And then I've been to the plant, an amazing group of folks. And I recall discussing when I toured both facilities with ownership how they believe that their company, in a department by department basis, competes with anyone. Their customer service, hands down the best. Their shipping department, hands down the best. Their technical support, hands down the best. That's excellence. What's two notches above? That's their engineering department. Their plating department, they are extremely proud that they can do 36 finishes on different base materials. Fun fact about their plating facility, the waste that they eject into the municipal water, the sewer system, is cleaner than the drinking water in the local municipality. Their cleaning water is perfectly clean, so they're extremely proud about how zero of a footprint that they have. I don't have all the facts, so saying zero footprint might be out of reality. It may not be accurate, but the fact of the matter is what they eject is their waste is cleaner than what they're taking in. They do a pretty nice job with all of that stuff. It's a really nice satin nickel as well, and that 619 means satin nickel over brass. Any questions on anything Bommer, please feel free to reach out to us. They may not be able to make the exact hinge that you want. There are instances when they don't have the ability to manufacture the hinge because almost no one can. I asked them to make an electrified 3.5-inch hinge, meaning an electric transfer hinge. They couldn't do it on a 3.5. Okay, so there are certain instances when they don't help or can't help, but few and far between. Any questions on the LB8004? LB8005-504N and a 619 AWS or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.